Hello, everybody, and welcome here today. And I am absolutely delighted to have Glynis with me. Glynis Frew here today, CEO of Hunters. How are you, Glynis? You well?
I'm very well, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely chuffed to have you on. Really, really keen. This is all part of our interview series with the what we feel are the key influencers from within the industry, and especially we'll come on to this a little bit later, especially in International Women's Week as well. I wanted to obviously make sure we had a good conversation with you because obviously the tectonic plates are changing on a weekly basis with mergers and everything here, but you've been a stalwart now at Hunters for some time, and I thought it's really what we're trying to get out here is really just get a really good understanding of kind of your background into the business, and I suppose what drives you as to be the kind of person you are, if that's okay. So just so I understand, Hunters, everyone will know obviously the name, have become a massive business within the agency, just over 200 offices as I understand it. What part did you, when did you get into the Hunters fold?
Well, I didn't join Hunters till 1999. Okay. And I'd had quite a bit of a career before then, because actually I started working in 1979. I bet you weren't alive, you weren't born then, were you,
You're being very kind there. No, I was six. I was six. I was, yeah, all
right. So I started as a sales rep in United Biscuits.
Oh, right, okay.
And then I worked my way up through that, and then I went over to Pepsi and I joined PepsiCo.
Okay.
And I used to work in their food division. So I used to, Walker's Crisps, you know Walker's Crisps, so that's all Pepsi.
You can see I know them all too well.
Yeah, I love them. And then I left there to run my own training business.
Okay.
And then we got a family. And so my training business was all over the world. But obviously when you've got children, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I stayed at home for about 18 months and thought, this isn't really for me. So I got a job just working part-time at Hunters, and I used to do the training for them, bit of HR and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just took off from there, really. I loved it.
Was that the main office on, is it Collier Gate?
Yeah. So I used to go into Collier Gate, yeah.
Oh,
so, and the only job title I ever wanted from being about 17 was I wanted to be called HR director. That's the only job I wanted. That's the only title. And actually I was lucky enough to get that there at Hunters.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's it, I've made it. I'm thrilled. And I love property. And you know, when I worked at the other companies, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, because I did.
They were massive, weren't they? I mean, those are massive blue chips, obviously, by definition.
Yeah. And they were great to work for. I mean, United Biscuits had some phenomenal training. Pepsi, I loved PepsiCo because they always had a can-do attitude. Didn't matter what barrier was in front of you. Okay, well, how can we get round this barrier, over this barrier? And I loved that there.
Is that what you took from those then, in terms of, and as you highlighted there, the training and development runs absolutely solidly through those, as it did obviously because you had that as your actual career?
There, yeah, that's right. It did. You know, it was that's all those experiences bring you to where you are today, don't they? Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
But I've loved property because even though I loved those companies, you know, I'd be in a job for 2 years and then I'd be looking around, okay, well, what shall I do now? Where shall I go? Shall I go into another bit or whatever? But I can honestly say, since I joined Hunters in 1999, I've just loved it.
That's brilliant.
I think it's really exciting industry to be in. It's always full of change, but you're creating something for somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, either somebody else has got a problem and you're helping them to solve it by, you know, selling their home for them or getting them another one, or they've got a dream and they want to move into this place.
Yeah.
And I never get fed up with that. I think it's just a great industry to be in.
It's not short of characters, but we're going to come on to that a little bit later, aren't we? We're going to go.
We are indeed.
Loved and so when did the opportunity to become CEO happen? Was that when Kevin famously went on to Parliament?
It was, yeah, because you know, I've always been a sort of a bit nosy and always had a lot to say. So I was always into different areas of the business. So I'd done quite a lot of the business. And then Kevin decided he wanted to become an MP, and that was one of his lifelong ambitions.
I remember talking to him. I remember when he, many moons back when they did. You remember back when they did use the Rebit software, and I remember him talking quite eloquently over lunch.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you this one before we go on. I remember one of my first weeks as a fully graduated software salesman, sales executive, and I was called into the mother of all meetings with Kevin, Russell Manning from Manning Staten, and Paul Cocker from Blundell's. And it was like they admitted themselves, "You've come to see the Yorkshire Mafia." I've never been so nervous since that day.
I know, I bet.
Yeah, I think it made me though, because I think if you can make it through that, you can make it through anything, couldn't you?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say that's a good learning platform.
Yeah.
That,
He wasn't so gentle when I asked him what a vendor was, but as I said, I learned quite quickly. Anyway, okay, so fantastic. So I mean, you know, you got that spot. I suppose there's a couple of things I'm really keen to know about. I mean, clearly the growth of way back when, what was it? I can't remember when we were with you. It was like 12 offices or something else around the core area, and then it's exploded in terms of the offices, and you've got the Bairstow Eves business, and acquired, you know, many other great businesses over the years, including some just recently. Well, talk to us though how you feel the company has changed over the years, not just in terms of size, but in the way you've done business.
Well, I'd say a lot of it has remained the same, in the sense that, you know, when the first branch opened in '92, that was built on customer service. It's all about the customer.
Yeah.
And so those franchise partners that we take on, you know, they all have that same philosophy. And, you know, if Andrew Bushell was here now, he'd tell you the same. We probably reject about 80% of people, in the sense that if we think for 1 minute that you know, they're not putting the customer at the center of everything, it's not going to fit. So our vision has always been, you know, to be the nation's favorite estate agent.
Yeah.
So everything is about the customer. You know, if customers get to the point where, you know, they've complained at a branch or whatever, and it becomes a formal complaint with us, all those complaints come by my desk, and we try and do something about it. If it's something where we think, oh, there's a training need or something like that, all the tech that we take on is all about trying to make it easier for the customer. Yes, a lot of that as well is about being easier for the user, so that the user has better, you know, more time to spend, better quality time with the customer. But ultimately, it's all about the customer.
That's that raison d'etre. Really, if it can deliver customer service, yes, there'll be efficiencies, time saving, but that's that if it's going to get to your desk, that's what it needs to hit the money for.
That's right. Yeah. So
I mean, and that's interesting, because of course, you know, to have that policy, isn't it interesting, as you go through in the early days, it's all just about winning business at any cost. And as you get more mature, actually, suddenly you start to realize that actually the people you work with and not getting difficult customers, clients, or people in the business is just as important, isn't it, as continuing to win new business? Because we were talking just off camera a little bit again, about the kind of mood hoover kind of thing there.
Yeah.
Just take an absolutely extraordinary amount of time, can't it? Distracting people and negatively as well.
I know, well, that's true. And you see in our business as well, we've got two lots of customers, really, because we've got the end user, but the first customer in line for us is also the franchise partner.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, you know, they're running their own business. And, you know, we all believe in small businesses. I mean, it was Napoleon, wasn't it? He said that, you know, the UK is a nation of small businesses.
Yeah.
But, you know, my dad was a milkman, was the local milkman. Kevin and I's dad was the milkman, and all that kind of thing. So, you know, we've been brought up with small businesses. And when you're running a small business, if you don't sell a property or you don't let a property, you don't eat, because that is your income.
Yeah.
So there's times, you know, when they might not be all that suited with some of the things that we do or have done, or, you know, whatever. And, but all the franchise team, the marketing team, all of the staff have that within them as well, about making sure, listen, You know, you might not agree, but you've got to listen. You've got to understand it from their point of view. And maybe there is something that we need to do. Maybe, you know, we do need to make a change over here or add that in there to make it a, you know, to make this better for them, whatever that is.
And it's really interesting one, isn't it? I was funny enough, I was talking, not that you can start throwing fruit, but I was talking to Dorian the other day, obviously from Belvoir, and he was talking with such passion about, you know, how when they first started, and just only a few years ago, how franchising was still sort of seen as a bit sort of, oh, I don't really get that. And one of the most passionate things he gets, which I'm sure you'll endorse, is to see those individuals, you know, when they've got so much skin in the game, you know, that it's hard enough business, isn't it? But when you know you've got the business, you've got head office and you've got the business principals striving for success, that becomes quite powerful, doesn't it?
Oh, without question it does. And I think that's one of the really great things about franchising, because, you know, I can think of so many now, as we're sat talking, of franchise partners that joined and they'd got, you know, I'm not saying they didn't have good businesses, they've got good businesses, but you see how their businesses have flourished and the kinds of things that they do. And, you know, a lot of the things that they, you know, are saying and doing, well, we take that on board, because we can see, you know, how they grow, and they also get on with one another. And you see, that's another great thing. I love that, because when we have our conferences, sorry, and we have the suppliers come to the conferences as well, and we'll have like 300 agents there, and they all get on as to the point where they call it a hunter's family, and that's not anything that you know we say, that's what they think, and I think that's brilliant.
That's not some hollow claim, isn't it? If you're doing it out there and they're having a, sorry, I got a bit excited there because you're mentioning conferences again, and obviously we're not too far from being locked out, so I was getting very excited about the days of those again. But that's great, isn't it, to hear that? And that's one of the wonderful things, is where you're not having to communicate the message when the message is being fed back to you that you wanted to hear anyway. It must be really heartwarming.
I know, it's great. Yeah, really, really great.
Do you think there's much difference? I mean, you spoke about the wanting to be the favourite, the nation's favourite agents. Is there any other, do you think, key differences between the particular way that Hunters and yourself do franchising compared to the other franchises?
Well, I would say, well, of course, I love the other franchise operations and very respectful, but naturally I would say, well, I think we do it better.
Of course, yeah. I wouldn't have let you say anything else, to be honest.
No, that's right, yeah. But I think going back to that, we want to be the nation's favourite estate agent. That is a way where you can galvanise all these different people from different parts of the UK into one vision.
It's a wonderfully sit on the face of it, again, a simple slogan, isn't it? But actually, if you go into it, what a good slogan should do, or belief should do, is if you have that in your thought of mind, whatever the challenge is, that really helps support the way you want the business to be run, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, it does. Yeah.
So what do you see as, I mean, as we just said, we're coming out hopefully of lockdown, and it's been a tremendously challenging year, albeit property's probably had it obviously better than most. What do you see, though, apart from just coming out of this period, as the biggest business challenge or challenges at the moment?
I think the challenges are probably the same as they've always been, really, which is you've got to get the right people.
Okay.
You've got to get the right people in the right seats in the bus, because that makes such a difference.
Everything comes from that, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. So I would say that that's always the biggest challenge. But then when you've got them, you've got to look after them. And I remember going to one of these training seminars once, when as you do when you're learning management and everything. And this consultant stood up the front and he said, he was probably the third, and he said, you'll hear lots of things, about you have to have this kind of management style, and then you've got to do this and you've got to do that. He said, remember, there is actually two simple rules. One is recruit good people. Yeah. And the second is don't hack them off. But he didn't use the word hack.
Exactly, you said that. That's on your influencer page, isn't it? That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that, actually, because, you know, if you're going to put the right people in the right seats in the bus, sometimes that job in that box isn't quite right for that person. So you've got to have a bit of flexibility so that they feel that they're getting real, true job satisfaction and they're making a difference, because everybody wants to make a difference, don't they?
They absolutely do. And I think the key thing there is, as well as always in life, it's about the expectations, isn't it? And sometimes you need to have, you know, firmer conversations just to either, you know, make them more realistic or just to make sure that you're on the same page. Because sometimes, you know, you should have had a conversation with someone some time back, wouldn't you? But you've let them go down the path for a long period, and it never ends up well, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
No,
get the right people on, and yeah, that's first and foremost. It's always been a people business, always will be, won't it?
Always will be. Always will be. Yeah, definitely. It's a people business. Well, all business is about people, but that's especially true of ours, though. Especially true of ours. So I would say people's a big thing. And obviously, what's changed now is COVID has changed nothing but accelerated everything.
Absolutely.
Of which tech is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So everybody was thinking about it, talking about it, but now I think it is exploding, and everybody definitely wants to do something about it.
No one can hide now, can they? No one can hide from the, you know, if there were people here before who said, you know, would have said this time last year, what Zoom? Well, when we've all got, you know, our more elderly relatives, and they're all over Zoom, they're knocking each other into different, you know, rooms on Zoom, and it's just, what's been fascinating is seeing that technology that has been adopted for the greater good, which will leave us better on the other side as well, won't it?
Oh, definitely. And I think the job that you do, you know, in Kerfuffle, genuinely, I think it is a great job that you do.
That's very kind of you.
Because there is an awful lot of tech out there, and it is difficult to understand, well, which one fits with me. Yeah. Because lots of agents do it, you know, end up with the same result, but get there in a different way. And, you know, have different sizes and all that kind of thing. And I think you help to make that easier. But I think that's very exciting, you know, the tech developments that are already here and will, you know, come in the future. I think it's very exciting.
Well, and thank you very, very much for that. I think it is very difficult, isn't it? Yes, on the one hand, it's hugely exciting that, you know, there is so much tech, but as we know, there's a lot of, can you have a shiny butterfly? I don't know if it was a shiny thing anyway. There's a lot of those, aren't there, that really don't seem to deliver. And we know ourselves, you can quite quickly build up your business full of a lot of those different ones. But on the face of it, they aren't too expensive in their own right. But if they're not working, they are expensive, aren't they? And that's terrible, yeah. So it's absolutely right. I think it's key to understand that matchmaking process to do it. And I think it's a very lonely, I mean, you must feel this yourself, it's a very lonely decision making those big decisions at the top level, isn't it?
Yeah.
Around some of the key suppliers, your name is on the block when you recommend things. And that's why suppliers need to make sure that they do deliver on their promises to people.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do need to do that. And it is difficult because there is no one supplier that's unique in any part of the industry. So, you know, you do need to do your research and make sure that, you know, they are going to do what, you know, deliver, like you say, the end result that they promise.
Because, as you know, I've never had a good idea in my life. I've only ever stolen them. I'm going to nick yours. What was it? The nation's favorite prop tech is now where I'm going to go.
Exactly.
So I'll pay you the royalties as agreed, but we'll come up with that.
Yeah, you take it.
And Glynis, I mean, we're looking at this week. It was International Women's Day. I always think just that in itself, you know, the fact that there's another 364 for men kind of sets the scene, doesn't it? You've grown to the very top as a CEO of one of the largest, you know, leading agents in the country. It's staggering when you go around, though, isn't it? Round a lot of the events and the conferences we were just talking about here, how few there are at the very top. My question to you is, do you think there's something institutionalized there, or is it more nuanced to that? Why aren't we seeing more women getting to the top of just in this particular industry?
Well, I must admit, when I first came into it, because by that time I'd got 20 years working experience, and when I first started, it was male orientated, when I first started work. So I can honestly say I was quite shocked when I first came into property, because in the other industries that I'd worked in, there were more and more women rising to the top. But in property, I think it was very male dominated.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised. But now I do think that it is opening up far more, because it is the kind of industry that, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, we did that film, When I Grow Up. Did you ever see that? We were asked to do a documentary, and it was about children from different walks of life, some well off, some not, boys, girls.
Yeah.
And we were talking to them, and we let them run the agency for a week, which I have to say was exhausting, but it was great. But the great thing about property is the fact that actually, if you've got good people skills and you like people and you can work with people, you can succeed in the industry. And that's why I love it. And, there's loads of women now that are coming through.
Well, the businesses themselves, businesses are full of women, aren't they? And I think it'd be interesting, actually. I wonder if it's because traditionally that tended to be the letting side of the business. And as we know, the focus on lettings, from being the kind of afterthought, is now the driver of so much value there. So it's only natural that side would come out. And yeah, you look at any vibrant agency these days, and there will be plenty of women, but it still seems to just be taking time for them to get to the top level. But maybe that will happen in time, and it's just a case.
Yes, well, I think it will happen in time, but it does seem to be taking them time. I agree with you. But we've got quite a few now of franchise owners that are women. And that makes a huge difference, because of then, negotiators, they do have more role models to see, and all that.
That's really important, isn't it? So to be able to, famously, you need to be able to see people in those positions that reflect you, whether it's a race thing or a gender element there, to feel like you can break through that glass ceiling.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. And so we tapped on suppliers there, and on your website, on your influencer page, I'll just run through a few of them. You speak very positively about the likes of Spectre, Data Loft, Fixflow being a fan of, Techlet, Payprop, and Homelet. I'm going to add Kerfuffle in there after what you just said there, but that's a bit cheeky. But
do that.
Which of those businesses do you think, and what part do you think suppliers have to play again in this industry?
Well, you see, that the ones that you've mentioned there, we have a very good relationship with our suppliers. And we've got a number of suppliers on the marketing side as well. And actually what we try to do is we try to make sure that it is a partnership. They're not just a supplier.
Okay, so that's really important. I always used to, somebody did try to nick that the other day, but when we used to win Supplier of the Year, I tried to talk ourselves out of it by saying, look, I really don't want to be seen as just a supplier too. I want to be seen as a partner with it. And again, you can almost feel the cheapness, but it matters, doesn't it? Because it changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. And you can take each one of them. You could take Homelet. Well, Homelet don't just do our references and our insurances. What Homelet do is, we explain to them, okay, well, we've got this bit of a problem here. How can we make that better? This looks good here. How can we, make it even look better? It's those kinds of things. And,
very much
and we have
a consultative edge.
Absolutely, yeah. And
what would you recommend? Is there any simple tips there that you would say? How can you get closer to your suppliers? I think, is it just having open conversations about what your expectations are?
Yes, it's definitely about having open conversations. Some people think it's all about having to go out for lunch and all that. It's not that. It's about having open conversations, and it's also about having contacts at different levels within a company.
That's an
important.
interesting angle, yeah. So it's not just you from the very top, you know, talking to like a Heather from Spectre, but actually supporting that throughout your, you know, the head of franchise talking to whoever the people are there. So it becomes
Definitely.
a multifaceted relationship, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That's really interesting. That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
And, you know, the feedback then that you get from different levels actually helps you then to say, okay, well, maybe we could do this, or maybe we should do that. But I think that's really important, that you've got it at different levels.
And I think it's an important one, as you said. You look to the beginning. Everyone would always say, "Look, people first." But I've been lucky enough to work with some of genuinely the very best agencies I can see around the world. I've never seen a great agency that couldn't be improved on with the right bit of tech as well. You know, yes, the people, but actually, as long as it is suitable tech, because if it can save you time, it just allows those people to do more of what they do best.
Yeah, definitely. I so agree with that.
Good.
And Kevin would if he was here as well. I so agree with that. And I don't think you should ever be frightened of tech either. You know, we've always been into tech, but now obviously it's a different ball game altogether. And the customer expects a lot more. And so you've got to provide that, you know, so that because the customer expects that they can transact when they want to, not just when your office is open.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not just a question of, well, you're office based or you've got tech. It's not.
Yeah.
Those two work hand in hand.
Got you. And going back over, looking over that career, what would be your proudest achievement to date? Obviously, we know there's more to come, but what do you feel like to date is the thing you're most proud of?
I would say over my career, I think I've got to be honest, when Kevin stepped down from being an MP, and all the board were very supportive about me doing the role, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if I can do it or not.
Yeah, well, you're always going to have that natural doubt, aren't you, for a second?
Yeah, oh my God, yeah, this is a bit big. But I've got to say that I think that the way that the company has grown, we're more professional, we're bigger, you know, we've moved with the industry, the people within the organisation have grown in their roles, you know, and I think I look at that over the past, you know, like 5 or 6 years, and I think, wow, what a team that was. Yeah. Great team.
And I was going to talk to you about that in terms of the kind of the people you respect most, obviously, in the industry. Clearly, that's going to be that senior team you're talking about there in terms of what they've delivered. Yeah. It would be mad not to have those included into it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And Kevin, obviously, as well from obviously from the start of the beginning of the company, of course.
Yeah, and Kevin and I actually worked very well together because he was more the visionary of it was his idea to go into franchising. And I remember the board meeting well, and I was sat there thinking, well, I don't know whether that's going to work. And of course, you know, you look back and you think, wow, that's an incredible journey. But there were lots of things that Kevin would say, you know, so he would be this, you know, sort of very much the visionary and a strategist and all that kind of thing. And I would be very much, okay, well, I get that. And then I would
how does that happen? But, you know, who makes the magic happen, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah. And so, you know, he did teach me a lot. And obviously on the board as well, there was Harry Hill, who used to run Countrywide, and Dean from LSL, you know, so it was, you know, it was a very good board. Obviously, you know, there's Ed.
And external to Hunters, who are the people that you think have impressed, that you respect within the industry?
Well, I was lucky enough to be asked by David Cox to join a group called the Lettings Industry Council, and that's where I met Teresa Wallace from Savills.
Okay.
And I have to say that the kinds of things that she's done to move the, you know, the market forward, move the business forward, all those kinds of things is incredible. So I admire her.
Nice.
Obviously, David Livesey from Connells.
Yes, of course.
I admire him.
Yeah,
very much.
Character. Yeah, what they're doing is incredible, isn't it, at the moment? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Kate Faulkner, you know, she's done a lot of positive stuff for us on TV and radio for the industry and everything.
That's the second time her name's come up. That's lovely to hear, isn't it? When you hear people like that deserve the plaudits in terms of they put the hard work in, keep their head down, and that she'll be really chuffed, I'm sure, to hear you saying that.
Yeah. And of course you, Simon, because actually I think the role that you're doing, where you are showing people this is possible with all the tech, which is very confusing. But the thing that I admire the most is that you want to do it from a collaborative point of view. And I think that's crucial for the industry. And I hope that going forward, the industry is more collaborative.
I think there's never been a time where being more collaborative doesn't work for you, does it? So I've always had I don't know whether it's just a simplistic view matching my name, but yeah, again, that's great. And I'm guessing, I mean, we can't go into too much detail yet, but Mr. Samples, of course, is going to be, I have a lot of time for Gareth over the years, because he's obviously, he's put in a lot of time, hasn't he, on both the agency side, he knows the prop tech side, and that's a hell of a different experience to have, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I like Gareth very much.
Yeah.
I think he's good to talk to, which is always the best start of all, because like we were saying, business is about people. He's good to talk to. He listens, and he's got a lot of experience, but he wants to get on with it.
Yes.
I see.
You know what you're saying before, actually, collaborative could be, could be his middle name, actually, couldn't it? Anyway, we'll get him on, and we'll make him blush. I'm already blushing, so you'll have to excuse me. That's lovely to hear, because I think you learn a lot from people, don't you? About the people they respect as well. I think that says a lot. Is there anybody out there that you haven't worked with that you would like to have worked with? Who is there that you kind of rued the? I always fancy, David Nunes was somebody who I really respected over at his LSL, never got the chance to work with him. And, sometimes you just think, oh, that's a shame, that is.
Yeah. Well, that's a hard question, actually, because there's lots of people that I look at and think, well, they're really good. They're pretty good. I think if there was one, it would probably be David Livesey. I think he would be. I think he would be quite interesting to work with. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, look, so it's Whaley the Magic Genie now. You've got 3 wishes to help improve the industry and everything else. What would you go for? Well,
the first thing I'd like you to do, Simon, please, is I'd like you to speed up the buying and selling process.
I might as well narrow this down to 2 questions or 2 wishes in future, because as if it's going to be interesting, the first person who doesn't say that, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe it's a bit like the Desert Island Discs, yes. Where they take the Bible. We'll take that as read then.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would like you to change the system so that the housing element of universal credit is paid direct to the landlord or the agent.
Okay, yeah.
And I'd also like you to change the deposit procedure, because that's another area where, it's open to abuse it's too messy. So that needs to change. And the third thing is, can we have a housing minister that really understands housing and stays for longer than 18 months?
Well, we've got a solution here that has already been mentioned before, haven't we? I have been I did just drop him a text, actually, just say, come on, what are they messing around for? It seems the most obvious thing in the, that thing is just like, why has that never happened before? We might actually have to start a little signature, sign him up to get Kevin on there, because Christ, if they can keep anybody in the job for more than a year, they're doing well anyway, aren't they?
No, they are. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So what would a modern day you say to a fresh-faced Glynis coming into Colliergate again, whole career ahead of her, bit worried though, obviously going into a stage here? What would you say?
I would say, as I say to quite a few of our youngsters that join, oh my God, it's so exciting, because there is so much to look forward to. Everybody needs a home. Yeah. They need food, and everybody needs a home.
Yeah.
And, we help to facilitate that for them, be that, through letting or through buying and selling. So it's so exciting. But what's even better at the moment is going to be this explosion of tech, and how we maximize tech, but never lose sight of the people and the customer and people contact. Dead exciting.
And I tell you what comes back, we've got that section on our influencer pages if people want to, just to say their favorite books. And that really chimes with what you were just talking about there, From Good to Great by Jim Collins, a fantastic book. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, again, amazing. The 1 Minute Manager, Kenneth Blanchard, is a fantastic one here. And I think you made the point on there, because you can relate to all their messages. I love this bit here. I don't have to turn myself into a superhero to think about it, and even more important, try to action what they suggest. But they're great pamphlets by which to guide yourself in business, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are, without question. Yes, I love all 3 of those books.
So I should always find a different way to end these interviews, because it always feels like it's ending on a negative. But if I will find another one after this, but what's the one surefire thing to make you lose it?
Oh my God. I tell you what, I can't stand. I can't bear people being rude.
Right.
And it's almost like there's a national disease at the moment that people think that, you know, if they've got a problem or whatever, they can be personally rude.
Yeah, and the consumer. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of people over the years who tried to join me at, you know, in the prop, because they just said, I can't deal with the general public anymore. They are genuinely, they will just say the most despicable things. And I mean, us prop tech people, we're often accused of being in ivory towers, but we very rarely see that, you know, in a B2B sense. But you go B2C, and it's eye-opening sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, I know, and they think it's okay to put it on social media and be totally rude and abusive, and I really can't bear it at all.
Yeah, and it's that, dare I say it, I mean, thank God he's just disappeared out, but it's that kind of Trumpist thing. It's like, deliver the message, walk away from it after leaving a depth charge, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
So rudeness, the rudeness, I think that's going to wind everyone else up, isn't it? Yeah.
I know, that's right, yeah.
And you're talking as well, those mood hoovers as well, the people that just have negativity seeping from their every pore. That's, the problem is you can see around a boardroom or whatever management meeting, when those people start talking, the eyes rolling up as well, can't you, as everyone else goes into sort of hibernation for the next 5 minutes.
I know, that's right, yeah.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what, I will leave you. I'll leave us on a positive here. What would you like to think that people say about you when you're not in the room?
I think I would like people to say, from a business perspective, I think I would like people to say, she's fair, she listens, she's fair, and she gets on with it.
Yeah. That's not a bad combination. That sounds like perfect. That's a lovely way to wind that up. Glynis, absolutely fantastic. Obviously, watching with great interest. Always will be seeing what you guys are up to. And thank you so much for spending your time today. I feel like I know you yourself and the business so much better now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Simon. You have a good day. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Not a problem at all.